big game is right around the corner, so let Old Southern Barbecue help you plan your big feast with their new playoff platter. 40 wings, 2 slabs of ribs, ranch dressing, and a bottle of barbecue sauce of your choice for just $89.99. You can pre-order online at oldsouthernbarbecue.com and bring your crowd to its feet this playoff season. Are you looking for a dedicated partner for your lacrosse needs? ES Lacrosse has got you covered. If you're brand new to the game, a seasoned vet, or a dedicated lacrosse parent, ES Lacrosse is the go-to partner for Minnesota Lacrosse and DTA Nation. Whether you need new gear, a restringing of your current setup, custom uniforms or apparel for your team, or one of their awesome starter sets for your brand new lacrosse player, the selection, expertise, and service at ES Lacrosse is unmatched. You can visit them in-store at one of their 3 metro locations in Woodbury, Chanhassen, and Vadnais Heights, or visit them online at eslacrosse.com.
And welcome to Down the Alley. This is PMAC.
And Ted T.S. Spirides.
And welcome to Section Breakdown, Section 1 episode. Excited to dive into, the next chapter of episodes, and we're bringing on sources, a lot to talk about, a lot to break down. We've been on a heater of episodes. We've been getting emails. We've been getting texts. We've been getting Discords, tweets. We've been getting hit from all angles. We appreciate, everybody following along. And really, we appreciate the guests that we've had. We've got a ton more guests to help break down these sections. But before we get there, Ted, how are we doing?
Yeah, good. It has been a nice run of episodes and coaches and people and Minnesota lacrosse legends, and it's been fun. It's been a fun sort of quote unquote what we call it the off season of we're not generally being 100% focused on Minnesota high school lacrosse coverage, but there's been some cool tie-ins to Minnesota lacrosse, some players that or some coaches that have either played here and are on doing other things, or maybe recruit players from Minnesota. And so it's been an interesting, a lot of interesting discussions that I've gotten a lot out of.
Yeah, no, it's been fun. I feel like we've hit every corner, of the lacrosse market or whatever you want to call it. We've been hitting different corners. So it's been fun. This episode, obviously Section 1, it's going to be a Tiger-filled episode. Farmington, we appreciate the Farmington coaches. Not you, Ted. I like you, but, bringing on some different Farmington figures to break down Section 1. We appreciate them. We appreciate their time and insight. And I think everybody's going to like, what they have to say.
Yeah, it's, this will be a heavy Farmington episode. So, I don't know if that puts a target on her back, or it was nice to talk to Mitch, who I talked to a lot, but also Brooke as well. And yeah, I think they both had a lot of knowledge on what's going on in the section.
Yeah, how, before we break it to them, what's going on in the lacrosse world? I've been seeing some scores of some preseason scrimmages. There's been some chatter on Twitter. Anything of note, anything grinding your gears, anything you want to break down? I there's nothing that's really grabbing my attention, but I could talk about a few different things. What anything grabbing your attention right now?
By the time this episode comes out, we will have had the first weekend of games for college, which is which is cool. It's kind of the official kickoff of the lacrosse season. The colleges go first and then high schools follow. And so this is probably my favorite time of year, honestly. It's still a little cold out there, but this springtime when lacrosse season's in full swing, the weather's starting to get nice. It's starting to get a little more sunlight. It doesn't get dark as quick. And so I'm gearing up to watch a ton of college lacrosse basically February, March, and then once April hits, it kind of transition over to heavy high school and dabble in college up until championship weekend. But no, I'm excited to watch Syracuse play. I think there's high expectations for them this year. I don't know where it's coming from, but um, the people seem to really be bought into Syracuse being this unbelievable team. They haven't really proven it the last couple years, but uh, I digress on that. But I think,
Before we jump off of that, Cuse, we texted a little bit. You've got a great preseason picture from your stud
yeah,
rocking a mullet.
I
I think I shot you a
yeah,
text of that or a screenshot, and then you followed up with, I think they're going to have a great defense. So if you got a great defense and you got Spallina scoring 8, 9, 10 points a game,
yeah.
I feel like the hype is warranted then. No?
I do think I like that is my bold prediction. I guess I can say it on here. I think Syracuse will have a top five defense this year. They're in year two of having John Oderna, who was a former Manhattan head coach. He's now the D coordinator as of last year at Syracuse. I think he's a really good young coach in Division One, and has kind of like we saw that their D was better last year than previous years. So I think that's the missing piece, honestly, is that we know that like they do their thing on offense, but they need to be able to stop some of these teams, um, and especially in the ACC that these high power teams, the Notre Dames, the Virginias, the Dukes, and North Carolina might be better this year too. So, but like, I don't know, like, well, I don't know what their record even was last year, but I feel like the last couple years it's been kind of like they've been like kind of average. Like they don't do very well in the ACC, and then they like do well
They were
outside.
12-6 last year.
So good, but like they don't beat the teams that like if we're sitting like if DraftKings has them as the not like the second best odds to win the national championship, you need to be able to not be 12-6 and lose all your ACC games.
Yeah, they lost basically all their games to a top 10 opponent. Close games.
Yeah,
It's not like they're getting blown out, but they're like,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah. And so yeah, Spallina obviously the big name, but Michael Leo is a guy that people should watch. I think he's kind of an X factor. Really love his game a ton. And I think a lot just rides on if they can improve the defense and at least make it somewhat harder for some of these ACC teams to score on them. I think their offense will be fine. So, um, yeah, I'm putting that bold prediction out there as maybe more of a positive affirmation into the universe that Syracuse will like somehow be known for their defense this year and make a run to championship weekend.
No, yeah, no, fair enough. Fair enough. Some Minnesota lacrosse happening right now. You got winter leagues. We're starting to hear about some things. There's different rumblings go around. I'm not going to dive too deep, into that, but plenty of lacrosse happening right now, kind of behind the scenes. There's training going on. There's winter league captains practices at some programs are starting up. Um, Hockey Day at the time of this recording just happened, this past weekend. Plenty of lacrosse players playing in Hockey Day, Minnesota. That was pretty cool to see. It's definitely the off season, but we're moving into kind of preseason mode where now I think people are starting to get the itch. People are starting to talk about lacrosse and Minnesota high school season, and I think our previous episodes have helped with that.
I agree with you. I think the bug is getting there. I'm getting more messages from people saying like, "Oh, listen to the episode. I'm getting pumped for lacrosse season." So, I think that yeah, it's all a good sign.
Have you had any good food? Have you tried any new restaurants lately? Anything pop up?
No. I'm just trying to think. We've been eating at home a lot lately, so we've just been like dialing it back, like just keeping it simple.
Yeah.
I will say the sous vide, the Innova sous vide. I'm
Yeah.
getting much more into that. And tonight I made the best chicken I've ever made in my entire life, and it was sous vide.
So you sous vide obviously to temp, right, or close to temp.
Yep, and they sear it.
And then then I was gonna say, then did you
So,
sear it or what? What was
so
you finished it?
what I did was I got like a bunch of chicken breasts from Sam's Club, like bulk.
Yep.
And I got out like they kind of come just like all like this huge thing. You gotta trim them a little bit. So I just trim the fat, get some of the like veins and shit out of there, and then I have a food saver, like a vacuum.
Yep.
So I put Old Southern barbecue chicken seasoning on the chicken, and then I made a compound butter with there's like these herbs called the poultry mix at Hy-Vee. I season the chicken with the Old Southern barbecue chicken rub, and then throw like 2 or 3 pats of butter in the bag and vacuum seal it. And this is just raw. Freeze it. And so I can just anytime I want it, you can sous vide it frozen. So you
So you
set
just
it
take it out of the freezer and
the freezer,
throw it.
the
Yeah.
vacuum pack. You put the sous vide in the water. You hit 160. You drop it in there. It takes like 2 to 3 hours probably
Got
to get it to like whatever the temp like cooked like 160. Um, and then you just pull it out, sear it on a hot pan, and it was like perfect. It was perfect.
There we go. There
So
we go. I feel like the sous vide comes in waves, like of popularity.
yeah. Annie got it for me for like Christmas in like 2022, and I
Yeah.
started using it. Like I was kind of like,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know what to do with this thing, but now I'm kind of like, especially with it's been really cold out. I mean, like the last couple days haven't been
Yeah.
bad, but for a while
You don't
there,
want to leave your house
I
though.
don't
Like
want
it's
to
been
go out.
brutal.
I don't know if my smoker will even turn on, let alone me having to go out there. I don't want to go out there and deal with
No.
grilling in 20 below or
No.
like, have you had any good food lately?
Um, I've been traveling for work a little bit, so I don't know if I'd call it good, but when I came back home, we went out with the Turnbulls and we tried Makanda in Wayzata, Mexican. Really good, really good. Not cheap. It's date night. It's date night, price point, but portions weren't small. So I appreciate that. And, bite for bite, really, really good. We had a gift card, which helped, but, really, yeah, really good Mexican.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah, no, I'm hopefully I don't know, hopefully hit some new restaurants soon. But yeah, like I said, it's been a lot of eating at home recently.
It's
Uh
been too cold to leave the house.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't blame you for that.
Um
I went to Fargo when it was like negative 30 here. It literally said on the weather app, it feels like negative 50. And I'm like, what are we doing here?
yeah. Yeah, no, that's like mid-January is not the time you want to visit Fargo.
No, no. And it's just like there's like the conference, it's middle of January in Fargo. And right now, like this week, it's fine. The week before it was, fine-ish. And it was like, nope, this week it's gonna be negative 50. And the hotel is gonna have rolling blackouts because the generator isn't gonna be able to catch up with the power outage from the yeah, it was that was the situation that I was dealing with
Yeah.
in Fargo.
I remember I was coaching hockey one year. We had to go to Hibbing like this weekend for a hockey tournament, and like it was like the second to last weekend of January, and it was the same thing. It was like 40 below.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, section one, we've kind of ranted a little bit. We got 2 good interviews, kind of diving into the boys and the girls, and yeah, we'll kick it over to them right now. The big game is right around the corner, so let Old Southern Barbecue help you plan your big feast with their new playoff platter. 40 wings, 2 slabs of ribs, ranch dressing, and a bottle of barbecue sauce of your choice for just $89.99. You can pre-order online at oldsouthernbarbecue.com and bring your crowd to its feet this playoff season. Are you looking for a dedicated partner for your lacrosse needs? ES Lacrosse has got you covered. If you're brand new to the game, a seasoned vet, or a dedicated lacrosse parent, ES Lacrosse is the go-to partner for Minnesota Lacrosse and DTA Nation. Whether you need new gear, a restringing of your current setup, custom uniforms or apparel for your team, or one of their awesome starter sets for your brand new lacrosse player, the selection, expertise, and service at ES Lacrosse is unmatched. You can visit them in-store at one of their 3 metro locations in Woodbury, Chanhassen, and Vadnais Heights, or visit them online at eslacrosse.com. All right, we have Brooke Rutherford here with us, and we'll let her do a quick intro. But as you guys have been hearing, we're into the section deep dive preview episodes. That means we are 8 weeks away to the start of the high school season. So we are starting with section 1 like we always do. So welcome, Brooke, to Down the Alley.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here. I love talking about Section 1. I grew up in Section 1. I went to Lakeville North. My sister went to Farmington. And we both now coach. I coach where she actually previously went at Farmington High School now. And she coaches at Lakeville North High School. So we were rivals growing up. We're rivals coaching now. I love coaching. And that's currently where I'm at. And then I'm now doing lacrosse full time. I also am the regional director for Ultimate Lacrosse, the new association that's in Minnesota.
Cool. Yeah. And I think I remember this past spring, we maybe made a post that it was like sister versus sister or something for when North and Farmington played. I don't know if it was just, I don't know if that was something that came up between like a group text of ours or if we like formally posted it, but that's got to be fun to coach against your sister. I get to coach against my brother-in-law, PMAC, once a year. But you know, we can sometimes let bygones be bygones, but it's when it's your own blood, right? Then I'm sure there's some there heated moments there.
Oh yeah,
I think the sister relationship may be closer than a brothers-in-law relationship. I'm not
How
saying
do
you
you
guys are
know?
close.
Yeah,
but
What are you
like,
talking about?
you guys weren't sharing rooms probably back in the day.
Share
Do you
rooms.
share hotel rooms? You share
Hotel
hotel
rooms.
now.
Yeah, hotel rooms all the time. We should get bunk beds, Ted.
Yep, I like it. I like it. So yeah, we got Brooke here to talk about Section 1, not only coaching in Section 1 currently, but played in Section 1, grew up in Section 1. I think Section 1 has been the last few years dominated by Lakeville South. We all know they're a great team, the defending champions. But a lot of programs in Section 1 and it are getting better. They're growing. They're improving. We saw Southwest Christian last year kind of popped off into sort of a they got the 3 seed in the section. Farmington's been good for a while, but Owatonna last year was 11-3. So a lot of sort of outer metro teams now are getting better. So maybe just what are your like high level thoughts on, before we dive into each team, just high level thoughts on the section and kind of maybe reflect on last year a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, overall, I think Section 1 is competitive. I will say there's always kind of been those top 3 teams. Even growing up, it was always Farmington, Lakeville South, Lakeville North that you heard about. And when it came to the state championships, Lakeville South was obviously going year after year after year. They just went obviously last year, ended up taking the whole thing, went in 2023, 2022, and kind of just all the way back. But yeah, I think it's crazy because when you look at some of these other teams like Farmington or North, they haven't been to state since Farmington. The last time they went to state was 2017.
Yeah.
It's a long time ago. And
they were like a hugely dominant team then though too.
Yeah.
And like you guys are too. You guys have a great record.
Yeah. So I think these new teams are just kind of popping off really because we really started growing our youth programs. Honestly, I look back at what Farmington and Lakeville North and probably even Owatonna, like all these programs looked like in the youth, and there wasn't really a strong youth program. But Lakeville in general always had one. And now I look at, where Farmington is, and they're growing that youth program. And so these girls are coming up, and we have a bench that we're building versus just 3 or 4 girls that are good on a team. We actually have girls across the board that can play in the games.
Yeah, I mean, that depth is really, I think you're absolutely right. Like, every team seems to have 1 or 2 players that are pretty good that they can rely on. But when you get to those final 16, final 8 teams, like the depth is really important. And that's where kind of games are won or lost. So I think that's a great point. I think talking about the section, there hasn't been a lot of change as far as new teams, but I think was Southwest Christian new for girls last year too. Okay, they were for the boys. Yeah. So that's a team that we've talked quite a bit about on this podcast is, they've and last year started kind of integrating themselves into maybe some bigger matchups. They got the 3 seed. I don't know, you could kind of argue strength of schedule, but that's been the only team I think looking at these that would be new. Maybe New Prague is probably like the other new program to Section 1.
And I mean, adding Southwest Christian was a huge change because they obviously play teams that we've never played outside of, for years. I don't think they play Mound, they play Delano, they play Hutch, they play St. Louis, like teams that we've never seen play. So when they came in with the number 3 seed, it was definitely, I wish we would have played them. We didn't even get to play them in sections. Oh. And so this year I was like, we are for sure like playing you guys. We want to see the matchup. They're our first game.
Awesome.
For a
sweet. Like that's going to be super fun.
And I think that's going to be huge for Southwest Christian too. Cause like you said, they've kind of had a different schedule, but now in this section, and for like a growing program, I think they've earned the right to, play some, bigger schools and programs.
Kind of looking at the team. So we'll start at the top, Lakeville South, reigning champions. We had them on a few weeks ago or months ago now. Gosh, that was, I don't know, a couple months ago. And we had their 2024 graduates. So they're all in college now, that big 3, right? But they're pretty confident that the next group of girls coming up are going to be just as strong. I mean, it's kind of hard as an outsider to kind of count. You can't really bet against Lakeville South at this point. They've kind of earned that. But what are your thoughts, on maybe them or just other top teams in the section that you think are contending to maybe give them a run and shake things up?
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows about the 3, right, from Lakeville South. And the 3 were impressive. But I think the biggest thing was not just their play, it was their vocals. Just how loud they were, the way they ran the team. I mean, watching those 3 play together, it was magic. You couldn't touch that. And I think losing those 3 and those 3 being on the field 24/7, never taking subs is going to be a pretty big hit. But also, I think they have a really good coach, and it's probably going to come down to the coaching at this point, right? It comes down to who do you have stepping up next? Do you have leadership ready and available? When you lose 3 players and they play all the time, and especially your midfielders, they're on both sides of the field. So now you're losing 3 girls on defense, 3 girls on your attack side. It's a pretty big hit, but they still have great players. I mean, their leading goal scorer, Ella Mills, is still there. And she's a great player. She's an awesome player. So I definitely think that they're still going to have strength. It's really going to come down to how well can they play together and the way that they get coached.
I think that was a good point you made too. Because I keep thinking that I'm like, who are like the juniors or even maybe some sophomores who are going to step up into kind of those leadership roles, regardless of points on the board. Like they can score, Ella will score, others will score. Who's gonna like be that presence to replace a Katie Grubbs? You can't replace her. But it's like, and even Tori too, like who's gonna kind of start being that voice now that those voices are gone? I think that's gonna be their biggest challenge this year of like girls, like who's gonna step up and fill that kind of, teammate leadership role. But again, I think the coaching is, like we know, is there. So it's like, who's gonna help out on the field when the coaches can't be out there.
Yeah, for sure.
Lakeville North was the runner up. They had a good season last year, 11-5. Obviously, play a tough, a tough schedule as well, being in the South Suburban Conference. Obviously your sister's team, so you probably hear quite a bit about them. What are your thoughts on them as far as maybe kind of a contender this year, and what they can maybe repeat going into 2025?
I think this year what Lakeville North is going to struggle the most with is they lost, their top 3 girls. They lost Izzy, they lost Leah, and they lost Kayla. And those are their goals, their assists, their draw controls. They still have Shay, which Shay is a great player. I think she's going to run their team, but can you run a team with one player, right? Like, I think that's going to be the thing of how well can they all work together to incorporate other players. Because if there's one player and you face guard them, who's the next player?
Yeah,
I think that's the toughest part.
yeah, and that's what I have in my notes. Shay Swanson, Lakeville North senior, had 93 points last year, almost double of the next person, but they lost 2, 3, 4, and 5. As well as their goalie. And Katie's a big goalie person. Like gotta work from the back end out. And so they do have a goalie that saw a little bit of time last year that is a junior this year. So they do have someone to step in, but losing a senior goalie too. It might be a different look Lakeville North team. They had a big group last year. So we'll see. We've talked a little bit about Southwest Christian now. They were the 3 seed last year, kind of have started integrating themselves into more of a higher caliber schedule. Have one of the best players in the state in Gisela Harder. But again, we kind of go back to depth. So is the depth going to be there to get through some of these tougher games in the section? But yeah, I mean, Gisela Harder had 123 points last year. I mean, geez, like that's
Was
incredible.
last year the year they like didn't lose a game until like middle of May?
They were 13-2, and she had, I mean, what I think is most impressive about Gisela is obviously we never played them, and I would love to see her take some draws against, some of our teams, but she had 166 draw controls.
Yeah.
I mean, that is like absurd to me. Like, just can't fathom it.
Yeah, that's and 109 ground balls too. Like
Yeah. She never
beast.
didn't have the ball.
incredible, like all around athlete and player. But again, yeah, I guess we'll see. I don't know what their schedule looks like this year. They played. It looks like Minnetonka and Lakeville North were their kind of 2 games that were outside of their traditional schedule. They lost both of them. I mean, you could maybe say they were supposed to lose those games. I don't know, not to knock them. Like they weren't.
Yeah.
But it was a good stepping stone for them. And so yeah, I think the notes here say she was once dubbed quote unquote the freshman. Now she's progressed to quote unquote the senior, and she's just going to carry that team like she always does. Getting to now your Farmington Tigers. So a couple things here. So first of all, I coach Farmington boys, so the girls always practice before the boys. So we're kind of watching your practices before we go out. And I texted this to Katie. Maybe it was Katie.
The true story. This is the true story.
I said, like, oh, you guys know the new Farmington coach. I'm like, there's a different energy here than the last couple of years. And this is not a knock on the old coaching staff. I didn't know them very well. We don't integrate soup much, like we kind of cross paths on the field. But shout out to you and your staff, because it looked like it was a different vibe, a different energy. Kids were smiling. They were moving around. They were having fun. And so with that, so shout out to you for that. And that's the first part. The second part is in the notes. I have like a list of 8 girls here that are all Farmington players that are, committed to playing college. They're returning. They've been playing varsity for a couple of years. How are you feeling about the Farmington Tigers this year? It looks like it's a good group kind of coming in for their senior year.
Yeah, I mean, so our motto this year, I'll share it. I guess I haven't shared it out loud yet. The girls don't even know it, but it's fireproof. And kind of the whole thing around that is just the proof that, we can kind of withstand anything. I think Farmington's been through a lot of turmoil. you know, like I said, the last time they went to state was 2017. And when I came in, the girls were kind of beat, to be honest. The energy was low. They were just not in this really positive mindset. And I was nervous to step in, especially because I had previously coached at Prior Lake, which is, I mean, one of the top programs, coached by some of the top coaches. And I was coming in as my first year head coach and do a program that was kind of just on the low. And when I stepped into that and came in, the girls really are the reason that that season was so amazing for us. Was they trusted me. From the second I walked through the door, I could just feel it. They trusted what I said. They trusted how we were going to get from point A to point B. And I mean, I had so many juniors. I think I had like 19 juniors. So I knew I had a bench, and I had some awesome seniors. And then, you know, I look at my sophomores and my freshmen, and there was this energy of like, we could be good for a while. I think the hardest part for me was I felt as though we were starting from the ground up, for sure. Just different coaching styles. You know, I was moving girls around in positions they've never played. And I I'm biased, but I am like really excited to see how they turn out this year. We got some top players. All of my top goals, assists, draw controls, all of that is my top players are still coming back, which is exciting. I will say, because Katie loves talking about goalies, a little shout out to our goalie. So our goalie left, went to Apple Valley. And so I came in with no goalie. I was late to the game. I joined late. I was trying to think, what am I going to do? And the Lord from above saved me, because one day I get a phone call and I pick it up and it's this random girl and she's like, hey, where do I buy goalie gear? And I was like, what? And she goes, I'm a hockey player. I think I'm going to try lacrosse goalie. I've never played lacrosse. I don't know anything about the sport, but I'm going to go to captain's practice tonight. I'm going to go buy gear right now. They said you need a goalie. She went, she bought gear. She showed up at captain's practice, jumped in the net, never seen a game in her life. I mean, the amount of times I had to sit down and explain to her the amount of girls that are on the field, how the game works, what she can and can't do. And she came out of the season with a 54 save percentage.
Yeah.
Like,
No,
That's cool. That's cool.
and
I love goalies. See, I love goalies.
you always want to have your goalie asking where to buy gear, not you giving it to them. I feel like that's a good sign when they're like, hey, you got to have a screw loose to play lacrosse goalie in general, just because it's like a ball being fired at you. But yeah, you know, sometimes that's the way it goes. You get, you know, just get someone that's like, this looks cool, and you know, they can take other sport athleticism and bring in skills and bring it into lacrosse. So you have a goalie. A shout out to a couple of these players. It sounds like 2025. So a big senior class. Caprice Meyer, is that how you Mayer? You have Kendall Sainsbury. You have Jada Steffes, who's a 26. Actually, they are all big contributors for you. So, you know,
So
Farmington.
a big thing about this 25 class, and like again, not a knock on the program before, but they haven't historically had like a prep team or a B team. So I feel like these 25s have been on like JV varsity for 12 years. Like, I mean, I think Jada for sure was like on varsity as an 8th grader. I know Riley, they were all up there. I did some work with them when they were like youth, but it's like there's advantages and disadvantages of having that prep team. And an advantage of not having a prep team is that now these girls have done the like full on varsity game day, game schedule, you know, seriousness of practice. Not saying prep teams aren't serious, but like they have been kind of thrown into the fire with all of like the varsity pomp and circumstance for 5 years, some of them. So now coming into their senior year where the competition is their level or below, just strictly by age, whereas they've always been that underdog, is like such an exciting way to enter the season. And there's so many of them. That's just such exciting I too would feel motivated. And like this class, I feel like we've been like waiting for this class. Something about the 2025 girls born, and what year were they born? 18 years ago. You know, like there's, I feel like strong 25 classes at a lot of schools right now that we've kind of been waiting for them to be seniors, because I feel like a lot of them have been kind of dipping their toe into some lax hub stats for like 4 years now. So it's going to be a really exciting season.
Yeah, and kind of move so you those are your top four from last year. I would say those are probably the four teams that are routinely, I mean, I guess Southwest Christian was maybe kind of an outlier, but North, South, Farmington, kind of a mixture of those teams are always near the top of the section. I want to talk about some maybe middle of the pack teams. So Owatonna, mentioned them earlier, 11-3 last year. They get three of their top four, basically three of their four goal scorers back. And then they have a really good goalie in Nora Marshall as well. Team 36 shout out from back in the day. And so they have a nice, kind of a nice squad coming back. You know, again, they should be just as good this year. They got brand new high school turf too, so they have great facilities down there. What are your thoughts on like Owatonna or maybe some of these other middle of the pack teams, New Prague, Rochester Century? Any thoughts on those? Maybe an underdog or just overall kind of thoughts on them?
Yeah, I mean, so we got to play Owatonna and New Prague last year. And I will say that both of those teams have heart. Both of them. Just heart, energy, spirit. They have that team camaraderie and you feel it. I mean, we played Owatonna in the sections and same thing. You felt it. But I think the biggest thing too is just the level of respect that these players have. You know, their coaches have done good for them because playing against both teams, we started together and we ended together. You know, at New Prague, they did a prayer circle at the end and everybody was together in it and they invited us into it. And it was this feeling of we're one team, you know, you versus us. It's not about the game. And going back and looking at both of those games, those were the two games that us as coaches at Farmington were like, we felt that. We really felt that. And, you know, at the end of the day, I always say skill work is important, but the heart is more important and the determination is more important and the effort's more important. Like, how bad do you really want it? And the cool thing about Section 1, I think, is a lot of teams are starting fresh and it could really be anyone's season. And it's going to come down to that team that pulls out, that team that really just shines through the other teams. And so even though we have middle of the pack teams from last year, you know, Owatonna was in the section championship versus South in 2023. So not that long ago, you know, there's been this shift of teams. And although South has kind of been that team that's always gone to the championship game and, you know, won it the last few years, like I said, they've lost a ton of girls. And all these teams are going to be competing for that title to go to state. And I'm really excited to just see who pulls it out.
Yeah, Owatonna, New Prague, a couple other just notables. Rochester Century, they had a good team a couple years ago. I don't know how they were last year. It looks like they were 500, 7-7, so decent, decent season last year. They have a gal named Olivia Morrissey, had 56 goals last year. So another team that kind of relies on one player to kind of do a lot for them. So we'll see how, if there's some other players that step up to give them a little more depth. Another call out here, Ashley Fisher, the goalie for Mankato. So check this out. She had 67.9% save percentage. She had 430 shots on goal last year in 14 games. That's about 30 shots a game.
That's insane.
That's a lot of rubber being thrown at you. So like, they have a rock solid goalie and some of the other, aspects of their team start to step up. They were where is it here? They were 6-8 last year, so kind of middle of the pack, but with a great goalie that they can rely on, they fix some of the other things. Getting a hot goalie at the end of the season, sometimes you can steal a game. So maybe watch out for them as well, Mankato.
Whose number do you guys have this year of like who's kind of either flying under the radar or like maybe an up and coming this year that you're like we can't count them out?
Yeah. Definitely Southwest Christian. Like for sure. Especially because my draw taker, so Farmington's draw taker, Caprice Meyer, is best friends with Gisela, like best friends. And so, coming into that game, like I said, out of all the teams that we play this year, that's the only team that we didn't play last year. So I don't have much to go off of. Yeah, I can look at stats. Yeah, I can look at film. But at the end of the day, you never know how a team's going to play till they play you. And with it being the first game, I think it's really going to set the tone for our section too. And I'm really excited to see how they match up against us. And like I said, we'll see how that game goes. I'm excited for it, but I think they're definitely an underdog. Even last year, like them getting the 3rd seed, I don't think many players and coaches and teams were really even looking at them. They were new in our section. They were just kind of flying under the radar a little bit. And to be honest, like I didn't even know their record until I looked halfway through the season. I was like, oh, dang.
They haven't lost a game.
I'm like, oh, okay, they're doing well. So I definitely think they're going to be a competition for us for sure in our section. We're going to have to be watching.
Yeah,
especially
great
with being the first game, getting the
and it could be like 30. It could be this temperature outside. We don't know.
And it looks like I just saw this at the bottom of my notes here. Southwest Christian had 2 other players with 50+ points, and they're both 26s, Elise Tays and Ella Bjorklund. So Gisela Harder kind of is the superstar, but a couple other gals there that can score, have the skills. Maybe that again, maybe that helps them with a little bit of depth and changes things for them. It looks like, I mean, actually, a lot of teams in Section 1, besides maybe North, have like a lot of returning groups. But Farmington right now, I think, has kind of the best on paper returning group, and like the amount of them, like just the amount of depth, and maybe some girls that maybe don't jump off the stat sheet because they don't score a lot, but they probably are returning starters or like really high level contributors. It's also nice as a coach to have so many returning players. So you don't feel like you're starting at square one on April 1st. Like they kind of understand maybe what the offense, like the base offense is. You can start to add wrinkles, just some of the lingo, all that kind of stuff. As a new coach last year, you're trying to add all that stuff in before you even can like get to like the schemes or the plays or whatever. But now they know you, they know your catchphrase. Do you have a catchphrase? We've asked a lot of coaches that.
Yeah, I mean, what's funny is I'll say like, okay, and I kind of give them this face after I say something, and then they give me all head nods. They'll say it back like, okay, like I got it, understood it. And the reason I do that is because so often I feel like coach, I've done it in my past where I'll just coach, and they're sitting there and their wheels are turning, but they're not really receiving anything that I'm saying. And so my weird catchphrase is like when I'm done explaining something or I'm talking to a girl one-on-one, I'll be like, okay. And she's like, okay, I got it. And so I'm really excited this year that I don't have to start that way. I don't have to start with like this whole, here's this new thing, and go through almost the basics in my head. Now this year, it's like I get to build off of what we already know and what we already did last year. And like you said, most of my girls are returners. So majority of them are going to understand and know kind of the way I coach too. And I think that's super important.
Yeah. I think too, we've talked about this before, that just like talking gives the illusion of coaching. So I think it's almost good for coaches too, to be like, wait, are we like all on the same page, or have I just completely gone off on a tangent like I do, to like connect on like, okay, what are we actually like trying to talk about and learn here? And I'm sure they appreciate that too, to be like, oh, are we like, I better like check myself if I'm listening or not. I think I'm going to go Owatonna is the 4, Southwest Christian's the 3rd, Lakeville South is 2, and you're the 1, because I think you guys, your biggest chance to beat them will be the regular season. And I think you'll be able to beat Southwest Christian, Owatonna, you play them during the season. You might not see them until sections. But I think just like strength of schedule, you'll be seated over them. And then I think you'll win the in-season game against Lakeville South, and that will get you to the 1 seed. Whether or not you have to play them again and win, that is what I'm glad we don't have to pick winners, because I think that will be a test for anybody.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen teams pull out a win out
Yeah,
of
well,
nowhere
yeah.
and go to
Yeah,
state.
I mean, like, someone else might beat them. We never know.
Yeah.
Brooke, thank you for joining us, giving us your your insight into Section 1, a little background on your lacrosse coaching playing career. I hope that both the girls and the boys are hosting a section final at Tiger Stadium on June 4th. And that would be fantastic, and we'll be cheering for you, but appreciate the time and coming on and kind of talking about the section.
Thanks, guys. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
And thank you to Brooke for coming down the alley with us. Sorry, it's middle of a work day, so I've been a little distracted in and out. But Brooke gave us a good deep dive, I thought, into Section 1.
What a way to kick off the sections, though. Section 1.
Yeah, I mean, Farmington, obviously, having the Farmington coach on, like we talked a lot about Farmington, but, looking at the notes here, they really do have a good group of girls, like a senior class this year that,
Yeah.
as good as any in the section of like a returning group, you know, um, Lakeville South, they're gonna be good. They're a reload program. They're gonna be elite. They're going to be tough. Their returning group, we probably don't even know who they are, because they were behind 7 All-Americans last year. So like, I'm not ready to, kind of say like, oh, they're gone, but to have a little potential, I don't know, potential challenge for them in the section, it just makes it better. And whether that's Farmington or North or Owatonna or whoever, um, I think, I think that'll be good for the section. Personally, I think as much as I, would love to see the Tigers do it, I think right now it runs through South. So, hopefully Brooke, can get them ready to, you got to just win one, right? That's the beauty of high school playoffs is you catch somebody on the right day. That's all it takes. So, and they'll get to see them. I checked, it is the last game of the regular
Yeah.
season, May 20th at South, Farmington South, last game before going into section. So that will be interesting to see how that plays out. Any other Section 1 thoughts?
I'm excited to see Owatonna, I think Owatonna and the Rochester Century teams for me within the section, to kind of see where they're going to fall with each other or against everybody else. I think those are the kind of the maybe keep my eye on for maybe a higher seed than you'd maybe think about for them.
I am no expert in girls Section 1 lacrosse, so I'm running off vibes. I'm taking notes. What am I hearing? What am I? I did a little bit of reading this morning. On downthealleypod.com. From the source. I'm trying to do more, but I was crammed with time. So I'm running on vibes right now. Owatonna, new field this upcoming year. Last year.
Think maybe it was it may have been under construction last year. I think it opened like this fall, I'm pretty sure. So it's going to be a new turf this year because
on that point alone, they're my number 4 going into this. My prediction going into the seeding, Owatonna 4. I'm taking Farmington at 3 because Southwest Christian, this whole episode so far, this interview, this section, I feel like we're sleeping on Southwest a little bit, and I didn't want to pipe in when the Farmington coach is on. We've been talking about, we've been along the Southwest Christian ride here, and the train has finally come. I think this is their window that really they've been waiting for. I think they're the 2, and I agree with you, Ted. Lakeville South, they're the 1 until somebody knocks them off. Lakeville South is the 1 until further notice.
Yeah, I think mine are pretty similar. I like Owatonna at 4. I'm gonna take Southwest Christian at 3, Farmington at 2, and South at 1. Now can they be beat? Yes.
For sure.
Last year they can't. They didn't. So that might be a kind of actually a stupid thing to say, but there is some turnover there. But they have a great goalie. They have depth, great coaching staff. They have a culture that has been implemented now over the course of a bunch of years. Um, it's going to someone's going to have to slay the dragon. We say the same thing on the boys' side.
Yeah.
Lakeville North is it doesn't really matter who they have or don't have. It's kind of like it runs through there, and that's going to be the challenge for these other Section 1 teams. Is I think Farmington will win that early season game, that first game of the year against Southwest. And I think that's going to come back to be a seeding situation. Now, do I think that Southwest will be a worse team than Farmington? I don't know. I don't think so. But that first game is Joker's wild. I feel like
I agree. It's like I said, it could be 30
it
degrees and raining.
could be sleeting. And so I don't know. But I think that game it'll be interesting to see. It's kind of like funny how like one game early on could like end up messing your seating up for like 2 months down the road. But hey, every game matters, right?
Love it. Love it. Well, this is going to be a long episode. This is just part one, kind of. So we will, from here, kick it over to the boys Section 1 breakdown.
The big game is right around the corner, so let Old Southern Barbecue help you plan your big feast with their new playoff platter. 40 wings, 2 slabs of ribs, ranch dressing, and a bottle of barbecue sauce of your choice for just $89.99. You can pre-order online at oldsouthernbarbecue.com and bring your crowd to its feet this playoff season. Are you looking for a dedicated partner for your lacrosse needs? ES Lacrosse has got you covered. If you're brand new to the game, a seasoned vet, or a dedicated lacrosse parent, ES Lacrosse is the go-to partner for Minnesota Lacrosse and DTA Nation. Whether you need new gear, a restringing of your current setup, custom uniforms or apparel for your team, or one of their awesome starter sets for your brand new lacrosse player, the selection, expertise, and service at ES Lacrosse is unmatched. You can visit them in-store at one of their 3 metro locations in Woodbury, Chanhassen, and Vadnais Heights, or visit them online at eslacrosse.com.
Welcome to Down the Alley. I'm getting blitzed by the Farmington Tigers from all angles right now. Mitch, welcome to Down the Alley.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to see what we got here.
Second timer, right?
Second timer.
Did the introduction interview. Make sure to go back and listen to that if you need to know a more extensive background on Mitch.
For those who don't know who Mitch is, Mitch, head coach of the Farmington Tigers out of Section 1. He is, in my words, in PMAC's words, has built up Farmington single-handedly, taken them out of the dooms, and he has brought them to the graces. And before Mitch has taken the reins, Farmington wasn't much to brag about, but now a legitimate contender year in, year out in the post-COVID era. Mitch, Section 1. I'm excited to dive into this section. The last few years, it's been interesting. In the pre-COVID era, let's call it, it was Lakeville North, Lakeville South. Maybe they'd exchange, maybe it'd be one of the Lakevilles for a couple of years. Maybe it'd be the other Lakeville for a few years. Now it's been, maybe it's been Farmington, Lakeville North. But maybe now we're entering an era where it could be anybody. I don't know. Maybe I'm opening it up a little too much, but I'm excited to explore this section and discuss, maybe where the section's headed here. But first off, in 2025, any changes in this section? Any new people, any new teams, or is it, going into 2025, same teams?
Yeah, I mean, that was way too much credit with the Farmington comment. I do appreciate it, but, A lot of people put in that work to get us to where we're at. Some changes in Section 1. We got Southwest Christian, and they actually joined our section last year. So you got Southwest Christian, and they were 10-5 last year. I'm sure we'll do a deep dive into
that's got to be their best season ever, right?
Yeah.
No disrespect.
No, none at all. None at all. They're
did
coming
not
off
know
their
about
best
them.
season ever.
Season
right?
ever,
Seriously
and they
did not know about them.
Yeah, the best season ever. I mean, we talked about them maybe a little bit last year, but they did beat Rochester Century 11-10 in the first round, like the play-in game. So they won a Section 1 game last year.
Mhm.
They were 1-1 in the playoffs. So so yeah, but I don't know new teams though, right, Mitch? From them.
No.
Not necessarily to a team in the section, but Lakeville South has a new head coach.
Yep.
So I should probably have done my research and been able to say who that is, but I do not know. But they do have a new coach. I think all the other teams, though, looking at this year, are all pretty steady and from what we saw in 2024. So
I've got a lot to say on Lakeville South. I can't confirm, according to my sources, who the new head coach is. But once we get to
Daniel O'Donnell, got him on Facebook.
He was in the system, coaching JV maybe or assistant varsity or whatever, and now has taken over Lakeville South. So that's one. I'd say that's the biggest change in the section as far as like new teams or new faces are concerned.
Yeah, I do have a lot to say about South as well.
I can't wait to get to them. We're teasing the Cougars. Everyone loves a good Cougar. But let's get to section. Let's get to Section 1 here. Section 1. We're coming off a couple. We're coming off a couple years where the Panthers, they've dominated the section, along with the Tigers in the post-COVID era. What would you, or who would you identify going into 2025? Who's the top contender, or who are the top contenders of this section?
Yeah, I mean, I do appreciate again about us kind of on the come up. Unfortunately, I'm going to be objective. It's still North section. I got all my second place plaques over here. We got one first place, but we've been over in North Stadium 3 times for the section championship. Haven't gotten it done since post-COVID. So yeah, I mean, to be fair and objective, it is still their section. I think it's important to give them their credit. I mean, year after year they've been doing it, but that doesn't discredit a lot of these other teams that we'll get into. Where I do think this year is going to be very interesting for Section 1. A lot of these teams that we're going to go over, they return a lot of guys. So we'll get into that. I do think Farmington's made a good run throughout the section. When we do play section opponents, I would say that the one that has our number is North. We've been able to get through a lot of the other teams. But yeah, so I would say North is still going to be the top dog of the section. That's not my prediction for this season. I'm not going to do predictions, but that's just, giving them the respect. They deserve it.
Yeah, and I think
go ahead.
I think to stay on North a little bit, obviously 2023 they were state champs. 2024 they were runner up. Led on the backs of Quinn Power, one of the best lacrosse players to come out of Minnesota. I mean, obviously, probably one of the best face-off guys for sure, but even just all-around lacrosse players and just leaders and athletes. He's now graduated. So that has been like the big elephant in the room about like what's North going to be, blah, blah, blah. But I think they get every other starter back aside from him on their defense, their midfield, their attack, and 2 of the best offensive players in the state, the Wonder Twins, the Piscatellos.
Talking about the Twins, I've got a lot of Lindenwood friends, and the Twins were, formerly recruited and committed to Lindenwood. And all I hear about these Lindenwood twins, the Piscatello twins, lifetime guys. They're in Lifetime. I've been to the Lakeville Lifetime like 2 or 3 times. Not a Lakeville Lifetime guy, but been there a couple of times. Every time I'm there, these twins are deleting and eating weights in the Lakeville Lifetime. And
Yep.
I've got buddies there. They're like, oh yeah, I dab up the twins every time I'm there. Every time I've been there, they've been there. They own the Lakeville Lifetime. These twins, I don't know what's going on in Lakeville. I don't know who these twins are. Obviously, I know who they are from a distance, from all the work they've done so far. But I don't know, based on just that alone, and obviously the work they've done so far, I don't know if you can count North out yet.
No, and like I agree. Every time I go to Lakeville Lifetime, I do see them. Super nice kids. But yeah, I mean, speaking of Lifetime too, I've been there and I even met the Fogo that I think is going to replace Quinn. Like I'm not really sure how this is going to play out, but huge kid. Like I would say 6'2", probably. If I was to guess 230. Like that's a big body at face-off. That's not easy.
Not small, not bigger
small.
than me.
No, he's a little intimidating. I had to put my little baby weights down and leave the gym after I saw him. But yeah, so they got a big body at face-off. Looking at it too, yeah, you're right, Ted. They return pretty much everybody. That freshman Jackson Whalen, he's going to come back as a sophomore. That's a huge advantage.
He got played like meaningful minutes too last year as a freshman. He's only going to get better. So I mean, yeah, that's a good call out because I think a lot of the offense will be focused on the Piscatellos. They're obviously well deserved, but he had a sneaky good year last year.
Yeah, and I went to go watch them in Winter League last night just to be ready for the podcast. And I mean, it's Winter League. I don't know how they play in that dome. I could barely see anything. But yeah.
Is this the Minnetonka Winter League? I've heard a lot about this Minnetonka Winter League, but is this the Tonka? Oh, this is a different Winter League.
Dundas, yep.
This is the Dundas Winter League. What's going on in that Winter League?
Yeah. Just to finish out with the North thing, I noticed. So I met Mitch Halstead this year, and I talked to him last night. I looked it up. He only played 6 games, and he's committed Division II. And then another Division II D-Pole, he only played 7 games.
Yeah, Jack Neeson.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's I think he's one of the most underrated players in the state, I think. Really good LSM, and he's I don't like I haven't done like the stats in front of me, so from a stats perspective, he may not be up there, but he's just he's an energy guy. He's just
I mean, in 7 games, he had 12 ground balls and 8 forced turnovers.
Yeah, they play differently when he's on the field, and he's a disruptor. So having him healthy for this season is going to be huge. And I think kind of last year we saw North kind of start out, I don't want to say slow necessarily, but close games. They played a very tough schedule, but he was out. I think he got hurt in that Edina game, which was one of the first couple games, and it was out for a while. I think came back for playoffs. So yeah, I agree. He's another one that is a name that people should probably be watching.
Is Slattery and is their goalie Tate Bauman, 2 guys. I believe they were both juniors last year. Guys to watch out for as well in critical pieces, obviously the goalie.
I'm just looking through it, but yeah, Slattery returns. Basically all their point production returns. I'm not going to get into conspiracies, but I do think they have a pretty important injury. I don't know the full details of that, but yeah, that's North for you. I mean, outside of faceoffs, it looks like they return almost everybody.
So, you're a Section 1 source. Obviously when we, and I'll speak for Ted a little bit, when we're talking to other sources or talking to the public kind of behind the scenes here, like you said, they return pretty much everything outside of the faceoff, right? Are they going to be able to do their thing, with the loss of a Quinn Power? Are they going to be able to play the same style? Are they going to dominate like they've been able to the last few years, or is it going to look different for them in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, face-offs are a huge part of the game. Just statistically, like your odds of winning go way up. But I mean, Prior Lake's a good example. I mean, they've survived with maybe not top tier Fogos. You don't really see like an 80+% guy coming out of Prior Lake, and they found a way to win huge games, So maybe just figuring out how to solve that puzzle. But then again, like you're counting out somebody that we don't even know about. Like who knows if this new kid, he could be just as good. I mean, he's got huge shoes to fill, but who says he can't just go on a tear, right? Like we don't really have a lot of data on him. Trying to see, but
no, fair enough. Fair enough. Moving on to I call it middle of the pack. Last few years, I'm calling this, and correct me if I'm wrong. I'm an outsider looking in. You got the Farmingtons, you got the Lakeville Souths, dare I say Northfield, dare I say Owatonna, New Prague is in the mix. I'm missing somebody obvious here, but middle of the pack, who's in contention, of this section.
yeah, it puts me in a really weird spot as like a head coach. Like I don't want to put a target on our back, but I also don't want to, say we're not a contender. I do believe we are. We return a lot as well. We lost two very critical midfielders with Jack Rosa and Tommy Lund. But if you look at it, I mean, we have a goalie that will be on his 5th year starting for us. So, I mean, Hayden will be coming back as a 5th year varsity starter. All of our attack return. We've had guys in the pipeline too that like you might not see. Like Drake Anderson's a great example. He played 4 games for us last year. And then the year before that, he had an injury. Like he's like 6'2", 230 as well. Like he's a dude. He dominated in U14. He dominated for us when he plays, but there's just not much on him because he's been injured. Got a super strong 2026 class and 2027 class. And then our face-off guy, Will Harris, he's coming in now on his 3rd year. So he started for us 8th grade year. Last year was 9th grade. So now he's a 10th grader. And, he's been hitting the weights hard. Like if you looked at him, he's a big kid. He's developed. He doesn't look like he's in 10th grade. So, I mean, we got some guys returning as well. The biggest thing, though, is you got a goalie on his 5th year. You got a solid goal, you build from there. I always kind of bragged last year that our team, if you just look at the stats, it's so spread out. Like we didn't really have like a top 110-point player that graduated. The points are pretty spread out, and I'm very confident. Our JV team, we only lost 1 game, and that was in the state tournament against Prior Lake. So, I mean, we got some guys coming up. I think our 10A team only lost like 3 games last year. The big question is now, though, how these guys translate over to varsity. Compared to North, I guess you could see that they got their guys that have been riding out varsity for years. And that's kind of what we're up against is how do we figure it out by having new guys step in and just looking at the wide share of points and responsibilities.
Yeah, no, love the breakdown. I think, looking objectively, from the outside, you've got a, goalie who wins, who saves 60% going into the senior year. You've got face-off guys who win 60% of their face-offs, a year older. And I've seen your younger teams. I've seen your U14 teams, the last few years. You're right. I think your window is again reopening. Is it this year? Is it next year? I don't know, but I would agree. From the outside looking in, it's a window for you guys to start competing for the section. This year and moving forward.
Yeah, and like there is a lot of 2025s that contribute for us, but like I would say the main bulk, if you look at our team, is going to be 2026s and 2027s. Now to kind of transition into different teams that I think are contenders, Lakeville South and New Prague to me, they kind of like look pretty similar in the sense of like their team has been their team for years and they're all seniors now. So I talked to New Prague last night, talked to one of their seniors. He said, yeah, we basically graduated one guy. No disrespect if there's more, but it was so fast when I asked him. He just said there's about one guy. And then Lakeville South, just looking at it, there's about 1-2 guys as well. So these are also two teams that I have pretty high on my list of just like, they're going to be legit.
No, I think these are two programs, behind the scenes, in the off season. I've had experience with the last couple of years. Start with New Prague. I don't know the intricacies per se with New Prague, but I saw what they had as kind of a base, and I've talked with their coach a little bit. I think this is a program on the rise. I think this is a team that last year was close. Again, I don't think they graduated a ton either. But I think this is a team that's going to be back and able to compete. And agreed, Lakeville South kind of on a similar trend. Again, they've been playing with their dudes for the last few years. Unfortunately for them, are going through, and maybe it's unfortunately or not. Maybe this is going to be another smooth transition for them. With a new coach and for the Cougars, I think this is a team that's ready to win. Talking to Sis on the Cougars, all of their top 5 leading scorers are back. Starting attackmen, who may have been injured, last year is back. Face off, all the polls, starting goalie. Again, according to this source, the Cougars are all the way back. They've been trending in this direction. They've been building. I think you're right, Mitch. The Cougars and the Trojans their time is now. What's it going to be? I don't know. What's their ceiling? Are they going to be able to win the section? I don't know. But if it's going to happen, it could be this year.
Yeah. I mean, New Prague, that's a team I don't know a whole lot about just because we've never played them. But I did follow them a lot last year, and I actually met Peter Diaz and then his brother. And his brother, he's a freshman now, but last year he was an 8th grader balling out at faceoffs. Like, he did really well. He's built like a grown man. I've coached him a few times, but Peter was out. So like they're like pride on faceoffs. Like, he wasn't even playing. He played 4 games, it looks like. So if you look at it, he should be producing about a 70% plus season, just based off of other numbers and just watching his highlight film. And then, yeah, I mean, again, we just don't have a lot of similarities in opponents. They're in a different conference and whatnot. So I know Lakeville South much more. And, I mean, they played us damn near to the final minute in that section game that we had to go to the championship. So they played us close. It's hard to tell with a new coach what happens, but that does bring a lot of excitement for the players. There could be a new vision, new agenda, and it could be the perfect storm. It's just hard to tell right now. So that's why I put those two at kind of like the same level of they are contenders.
Yeah. So I think so I'm glad Mitch touched on Diaz, the face-off guy for New Prague. I think getting him back, that's going to really springboard kind of New Prague from being middle of the pack to being a much different team. And then yes, PMAC, Lakeville South, to their credit, in that section game that we played, they did their game plan from top to bottom was to make that as gritty and ugly, physical, mucked up game as possible, and they executed it to perfection. And I think part of that is like that is the type of player they have on their team, and that's not saying they're not skilled. Like, they certainly have skilled players, but they have really good athletes that I would be willing to bet are probably multi-sport type kids, like football players, hockey players. Lakeville South has a ton of great athletics across the board. And so they're hard, they're a hard team to play against. Like maybe we go in as Farmington, I can only speak for myself, but maybe PMAC as Prior Lake, you can echo this. Maybe you go in thinking, hey, we're the more skilled team, we can like kind of dictate, but like they fight hard and they're going to give you 48 minutes of like a full effort, and props to their former coach for taking a team that he inherited that was 1-12 to getting them to this point where like they're bought in, and as Mitch mentioned at the beginning, now they're in year 3 as a group, as a core, and seniors, and so yeah, they're a very interesting team. We'll see how that plays out.
No, I would agree, especially this last season. They made it difficult. They were running plays. They were organized. It wasn't the Lakeville South of 3-4 years ago. If you didn't show up, you're gonna have problems. Kind of moving into the next part of this section. Maybe a couple of dark horses, if you will. Owatonna, Northfield, maybe Southwest Christian or Mankato. Who are these teams, and who out of this group could you see making some noise in Section 1 in 2025?
Yeah. Oh, do you want to go, Ted?
I think Mitch will probably add to this, but we were talking about Owatonna last year, that Owatonna was the best 0-5 team of all time last year. They lost their first 5 games by 1 goal to Rosemount, 1 goal to New Prague, 4 goals to Farmington, 3 to Northfield, 1 to Andover, and then they finally got a 1-goal win on Tuesday, May 7th. So they had just an absolute meat grinder of a first 6 games. And I will say, when we played them, and Mitch, you can add to this here, like they were a lot like Lakeville South in the way of like athletic, gritty, tough, played you hard. Like where they maybe lacked in depth or skill, they made up for it in all the other areas. And like I was nervous we were going to lose that game at certain points of that.
We were
that
losing.
game. I think we were losing. Like
Yeah.
it really impressed me last year from their team from the year before, from 23. I think they lose a couple of their big guns, but Owatonna is a team that another team that's just not fun to play against.
Yeah, I mean, like I kind of always look at these teams like with identities, and theirs is just like pure heart. I swear, they're always super passionate. They come and give you their best game. Every time we've played them, it's been close. You've never seen a blowout between the two of us. They got good coaches down there. We have a few of them that have helped out with Titan in the past, and they've been awesome. The biggest thing with Owatonna is like they're athletic, like super athletic. You go out there to the coin toss and you see like their whole starting lineup is, you got a football running back all-star. You got these linebackers suiting up. I mean, their starting attackmen last year, they're all like 6'4". So they got some guys for sure. I do believe they also have a strong 2026 class. I remember watching them when they were U14s. And like Ted said, they did lose some guys, but they also return a lot. You can see Jack Strom, they lost. It's a pretty big loss. I think he plays at the U of M now. And then who's that guy? He took a bunch of face-offs for him. Oh, here we go. Caleb. Number 50.
Philip Peter,
Yeah.
Philip Peter, yeah.
Yeah, he was a dude as well for him. But yeah, they got a lot returning as well. So I do think like they're a dark horse for sure. I actually have 3 teams for my dark horse. The other one is going to be Rochester. So Rochester, that community is like super bought in to what they do. They travel together. They're super, from what I can tell, they're tight knit. I know there's like some co-op stuff that they have to figure out, but I mean, this is a really, really young team. They were a young team last year, and if you look at their record, they're 1-12. But I mean, when you roll out there with basically a team of freshmen, those are the growing pains that a Lakeville South and a New Prague, even a Farmington, has had to deal with in the past. In a Lakeville, like all these teams. So yeah, they return a ton. They got some guys on offense for sure. I've seen them play in person. And then their defense is really, really solid. They got some good athletes. I think their strongest class, I would say, is the 2027s. So whether it booms now when they're sophomores or it comes later in their career, like they're building something really special there. I love working with those kids. But yeah, they're also my dark horse contention just because they do a lot of stuff together. Like they do a lot of off-season stuff together. They're working hard. I do think losing Adam Gibson from Mayo, like that's a tough loss. He really worked well with those Mayo kids and got them to one of the best teams they've ever had, probably the best team they ever had. But he's coaching lacrosse in Germany now. But yeah, I got Rochester down for a dark horse.
Love that. Love that. Go ahead.
Yeah, Rochester, you talked about that 2023 Rochester Mayo team. This Rochester group, I know they're co-op now. I feel like this Rochester group kind of gives me same vibes of that 2023 group where they kind of all had to just play varsity as 8th graders and 9th graders and now but like there's talent there. Like no doubt there's talent there. We've seen it. I know two of their polls that have been like starting polls as 8th graders and like they're finally like in high school now, so it's just like it's that will be interesting to see. I agree that it might be a year from now. It might not be this year, might be next year, but yeah, they're a team to watch. And then
Yeah, and then the last like dark horse, and I'll explain why these other two I just don't have on them. Northfield. So Northfield, those players are also extremely bought in. If you look at it, it's like a smaller school technically, right? They play single A in hockey compared to like a Farmington. I guess it's not the same numbers wise, but I mean they get kids out, they get kids committed. They got a strong 2026 class. So I would say their biggest losses last year, they lost a solid defensive core, and then they lost
their goalie.
They lost their goalie, and then they lost three of their top goal scorers. But just kind of like with other teams, they have guys in the pipeline for sure. Like their JV team, they found some success. They had a lot of athletes play for the first time last year and the year before that. But this is a super bought-in community. I've coached their off-season, their preseason training camp for years, and it's always awesome coaching the Northfield kids because they go 110%. They're lax rats. They're bought into the sport. They're bought into each other. They're bought into the community, and the parents are super supportive. They got a good booster club working over there, good coaching. So they'll always be a dark horse for me and a contender. But this year, I just think I didn't put them in the contender list just because if you look at the other teams in the contender list, they lost much more. So it's almost like prove it, right? Like be the dark horse, own it. But I do see them having success for sure.
Really cool stadium. I like their stadium as well. The grass and kind of a throwback, vibe, on game day for them. Section 1 has been, fairly quiet. I don't know if that's a fair assessment, kind of in the pre-COVID, but, coming out of COVID, it's been nothing, but that, Farmington, making noise, Lakeville North making noise, going on state tournament runs. Lakeville North obviously won it 2 years ago. Going into 2025, if it's Lakeville North, if it's Farmington, if it's somebody else, how does Section 1, how are they going to compete at the state tournament compared to, maybe some of the other sections?
Yeah, just real quick before that, I just want to say, like with Mankato, they could also very well be a dark horse. I'm just looking at the MN Lax Hub. They lost a lot. So who knows how the rebuild is? I just don't know enough about the community. I haven't coached any of these kids. Their guy Colton, he scored 70 points last year, so he's gone along with basically every name I'm pulling up. So that's just why I didn't have Mankato on there, but they could very well prove it. They've had great athletes in the past. Every time we played them, it's been a really gritty game. So Jamie over there, he's building something cool. It's just they lost a lot, so we got to see, right? As far as the state tournament goes, it's just hard to say because like it's been Lakeville North and then Farmington got in there, in 2022, and then Mayo is the only other school that's ever been in the state tournament. So it's basically your data that you're looking at is Lakeville North. How did they do? How did they represent our section? And I hear it a lot where people always would tell me, "Oh, Section 1 is weak and stuff." It's like, okay, well, I mean, you still have a very successful team that's been winning it that goes in the state tournament, and I mean, they've made teams look silly in the first round, right? So it's hard to tell just because this isn't like a widespread list of teams I can tell you. But yeah, Lakeville North, they've proven how good our section can be. But yeah.
And I'll add to that too. I think when Mayo made it in, I think 13, they won. They lost their first round game, but they won I think they won consolation that year, or I know they won their second game. And then, like Lakeville North seems to be every time they get in, they're not an easy out. They've been to multiple Final Fours. They've been to the state final a few times. They've obviously won it now in 2023. And like last year specifically, I think Section 1, Mitch, I think you're right. Like previously, Section 1 was pretty weak compared to maybe some of the other sections. But last year, I felt like maybe the last couple years, Section 1 has actually been one of the more middle of the pack sections as far as difficulty. You had multiple teams that have been in the top 10. You have some up and coming teams that had some upset wins throughout the season, and I'm not ready to say it's like the most difficult section, but we've seen some like down trends in the difficulty of other sections, and I think Section 1 is like kind of slowly gotten better. And then you obviously have the powerhouse of Lakeville North in that section, which I think in a way makes all these other teams better, because we know that like at least I can speak for Farmington, is like we know like that's the standard we have to meet if we want to kick the door in and go and get to the state tournament. Like we have to be able to beat Lakeville North, which is not an easy task. Like I do still think there's room for growth and like competitiveness within the section for whoever does make the state tournament, if it's not Lakeville.
Yeah. I do think too, like even with those comments back in the day, because like I did play for Farmington, so I played a lot. I've been playing Section 1, coaching Section 1, but some of these Section 1 teams, especially down in the Big 9 area, like these are real athletes. They're super passionate about it too. Like they'll give you their all. They're super physical teams. Like if you ever watch a Big 9 game, I mean, sometimes it's like a WWE match. It's more entertaining to me than the PLL. Like I love watching the Big 9 games because they're passionate. It's gritty. Penalties just left and right, and yeah, that's what it is.
And like the way their conference schedule is, they play twice in the season. They play each other twice, home and home. So like some of those games, we'll text each other when we're watching like an Owatonna Northfield game, and it might be the second one of the season where maybe there's some unfinished business in the first game, and it gets pretty wild.
Yeah, and like we play them, and it's like wow, our guys just aren't used to it. And then coaching them too, like they do have a chip on their shoulder. It's pretty cool to see.
If you're playing your section teams twice, you should do it college hockey style. Play Friday night, play Saturday night, back to back, and don't wait. If there's something that carries over from the previous game, take care of it the very next day.
Owatonna and Rochester had to do that because their first game got canceled or something, so they went back to back.
I love that. Like if you could practice Monday through Thursday and then play Friday, Saturday, that would be an elite schedule.
Yeah.
I know that, speaking of that, just like Farmington, and I don't know about other team schedules, but the Farmington schedule came out, and we have like 2 Friday night games and 2 Saturday night games this year. So like, I don't know. It's that's like we have some like weekend night games, like prime times.
Friday night games are my favorite. Friday night games are so fun. You're just coming off the work week, coming off the school week, under the lights. I don't know. I like a good Friday night game.
Absolutely.
Bold predictions. What do we think? Do you have any bold predictions on section one? Is there something that excites you? Do you have a ranking? What, I'm not going to force you into anything, but what do you got for us to close out section one chatter here, Mitch?
I mean, it's not necessarily a bold prediction, and I feel like I did kind of cover any bold predictions I have, but this year is probably going to be one of the most interesting for Section 1. Some of these teams that have always been counted out, they're starting to build up. Farmington, Lakeville South, New Prague, Rochester, like all these teams, they're building up for something special. They're buying into like a lot more off-season stuff. I think just with lacrosse being a newer sport, it took a while for like solid coaches and solid commitment, like maybe parents that knew how to get a lay of the land in those more communities out there. It just took a while, but things are catching up. You can see that a lot of these Big 9 schools and Section 1 schools, like they want to play out of conference that are tough opponents like Rosemounts and whatnot. I think it would be very interesting how things lay out, much more interesting than it has been in the past.
Do I get a top four section ranking out of you? You can pass. You don't have to. I won't force it out of you.
I think I said my top four. I'm not going to rank them though. So
Okay, fair enough.
like I'll just Farmington's in there, New Prague is in there, North is in there, South is in there as well.
Mitch, we appreciate your time. We appreciate your insight. You being a player in Section 1, now a coach. You've been in it for years now. So, obviously, thank you for your time and your insight into the section here going into 2025.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
And thank you to Mitch Grengs, the head coach of the Farmington Tigers, for coming down the alley with us, breaking down Section 1. Like he said, he's been a player in this section, now coach. He's been in it for years. He's been a part of the growth of the Tigers, obviously, but he's seen the different trends amongst the different programs and where the section is today. Thank you to Mitch for coming down the alley, but good insight, great insight. And I think this is going to be a section, as tight it has been in a couple of years.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think Mitch kind of alluded to it. Section 1's weird because you have the entire Big 9 conference, and then you have North South Farmington, who are in the South Suburban, and then like now New Prague and Southwest Christian are kind of the outliers. New Prague's in the Metro West, and Southwest Christian is in like the Wright County Conference or something like that. So, luckily our AD does a good job scheduling those Big 9 teams within the season, so we kind of get to see a lot of them. But it is really interesting. Like there kind of are some mini rivalries within the section that like are already there, not because of section play, but because of conference play and like rival high schools. So it's kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, no, that is interesting. I'm trying to think about, the section that I'm a part of. Is it like a rivalry between the South Suburban teams and the Big 9 teams a little bit?
Yeah. There definitely is that. I think the Big 9 teams want to prove that they can run with the South Suburban teams, and maybe it's coming from I don't know, maybe people will think that's like an arrogant remark or something like that, but there is a little bit of a chip on the shoulder. Like they've proven in the last couple of years that like that conference has gotten better and those teams have gotten better. And, there's always a Big 9 team that ends up being really good and gets some wins. Like Mayo a couple of years ago, they went and like played non-Big 9 teams really close. I don't know if they got a win, but it was like overtime games or whatever. Last year, Northfield, they gave us a game last year. Like we did not, I think we won by 2 or 3 goals, but like we were not in full control. You were at that game. We've always, Owatonna last year, we beat them by a couple goals, but like it was not it was not pretty. I mean, that could have a couple bounces either way. There could have been that could have been different. So I think I don't know if it's like a rivalry necessarily, but they rise up to play when they get a chance at a South Suburban team or any of the Metro conference teams. They're gonna rise up because like they want to prove like that's a statement for them. You know, like we went and played the big boys and we got a win or we kept it close or whatever. So I think there is an aspect of that for sure.
Right on, right on. Rankings, rankings, top four. What do you have on section one?
This is so my bold prediction is going to start this ranking process off. I think Rochester's going to get the 4.
Really?
Yep, I think Rochester's going to get the 4.
Do they have something in the pipeline that maybe we didn't discuss fully?
They have some guys that are elite lacrosse players and athletes that I don't know why it didn't work last year for them. But I think there was a lot of stuff with the co-op. It was just getting used to coexisting.
Sure.
And, but like when I look at I know a lot of the individual kids on that team, and they're really, really good athletes and really good lacrosse players. So part of me is like last year's 1-12 was just a mess from the start, but like there's something there.
Okay.
I don't think they're deep enough to win the section, but like I think they can go and get a couple wins and find their way in the final 4 teams.
Okay. Okay.
I think Lakeville South is the 3. And for the reasons we talked about, I think they're a great squad and they get a lot of guys back. I'll put Farmington at 2, but not by much. I think Lakeville South proved last year like they're every bit as capable of beating a Farmington, and played us very close in that game, section game. So I'm putting Farmington at 2. Maybe that's a homer move there. And then North is the 1 right now. Again, it's kind of been their section, so like you can't really argue against what they've done, and they get everybody back except one guy basically. So yeah, those are my 4.
I got notes from Katie. She's got some great notes. She's satelliting in here. She's got Farmington at 1, Lakeville North at 2, and then 3 and 4 just throw TBD on them. It's wide open for Katie after the top 2. My top 4. I don't know if this is controversial. I don't know if there's bold predictions in here. For me, I love the Rochester take. That's throwing a curveball for me. But I'm gonna go with who I know and what I know. So I'm going New Prague at 4. I'm sticking with them. They were a 5 last year. Sounds like Mankato graduated a lot. I've got my ears and eyes on Rochester now. I'm going to be waiting for them. I want to learn more and see more about them, early in the season. So I'm going New Prague. I agree with you on Lakeville South. I think they're the 3. And I'm actually going to go north too. I'm going to go Lakeville North too. And maybe I'm listening to the public too much on this Quinn Power graduation. I don't know. I'm the public and the noise, they might be messing with my head. They might be messing with my judgment. Farmington's my 1. I think their window is now open to start competing and start winning this section. Is it going to happen this year? I don't know. Time will tell, but I'm here for it. I'm going to give them the 1 seed, and here we go.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the vote of confidence. for both you and Katie. Hopefully the Tigers can get the one, so we don't have to play on that BS field at Lake North. That's like 20 yards too narrow.
Oh my gosh! Now that you mention it,
Hey, you know
I
what?
forgot that. That's
And
a home field advantage
Very-
/ visitor disadvantage.
yeah. So that regular season game becomes really important for potential home field. Just North is tough enough to beat as it is. But when you have some different field dimensions, some different colors, they have the drop shadow on the numbers. It's like a white number with a black drop shadow. It's like the premium turf, like the premium install. So that messes with you. They get the community out. It's not an easy environment going to a section final game at Lakeville North. So hopefully we can avoid that. So we'll see what happens.
We will see. We'll see what happens. A lot of game to be played. More sections to break down next week. We'll be breaking down section 2. We got more sources. We've got more interviews. We've got more teams, more players to chat about. And I'm excited to break it all down.